Hello, my dear friends. As the night gently settles around you, let us begin a quiet journey into a world far away from our own. A world wrapped in snow, in wooden villages, in slow footsteps, and in the warmth of crackling fires. This is old Russia, not the Russia of cities, railways and crowds, but the Russia of forests, frozen rivers, soft lamps, and lives lived close to the earth. Tonight, we walk softly into the world of women who lived in that distant time. Their days were simple, their movements steady, and their strength quiet but deep, like still water under winter ice. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a small Russian village centuries ago. The air is cold, but the cold is gentle, almost comforting. The roofs of the wooden houses are covered in white snow, and thin gray smoke rises slowly from their chimneys, disappearing softly into the pale morning sky. There is no sound of machines, no sharp voices, no rushing footsteps, only the hush of nature and somewhere in the distance, the soft call of a rooster greeting the dawn. As you step closer, you notice one small house among many, built from thick logs darkened by time and weather. Inside this house, a woman is waking up before the rest of her family. She rises quietly from her bed near the warm clay stove, the pechka, which has held the heat through the long winter night. The stove is more than just a place to cook. It is the heart of the home, a gentle guardian that keeps the family safe when the winds outside grow harsh. She places her feet on the wooden floor, worn smooth by many years of careful footsteps. There is no electricity here, no clock glowing on the wall. She knows it is morning, simply by the faint silver of dawn peeking through the small window. She moves softly, making sure not to wake the children still bundled in thick blankets nearby. Her life is built around routines so familiar they feel like breathing. There is comfort in that rhythm, a calmness that runs through everything she does. She lights a small oil lamp, shielding the flame with her hand to keep it steady. The dim golden light fills the room slowly. You can almost feel the warmth of it on your skin. She reaches for a wooden bowl, a spoon carved by her father long ago, and begins to prepare the morning meal. She does not work quickly. She works patiently, her hands moving with a soft confidence learned over many years. Life here does not reward speed. It rewards steadiness. Outside, she hears the quiet groan of the icy trees, the tiny crackling sound of frost breaking in the early sunlight. She knows the seasons deeply, not through calendars, but through touch, through smell, through the way sunlight enters the room. Winter, spring, summer, and autumn each shape her days in different ways, and she accepts them without complaint, the way her mother and grandmother accepted them before her. Her world is small in distance but rich in meaning. The home is her universe, a place she maintains with gentle strength. She keeps the fire alive, she prepares meals, she weaves cloth, she teaches her children, she cares for her husband, and she listens to the wind as it moves through the trees each night. She does not seek recognition. She works because that is how life flows here. Quietly, naturally, without fuss. When the sun rises fully, the house brightens with soft gray morning light. The children begin to stir. Her husband steps outside to check the animals, and she continues her tasks, not hurried, not stressed, but moving like part of a slow river. This is how a day begins for a woman in old Russia, not with noise but with silence, not with rush, but with breath. Her life may seem simple from far away, but within that simplicity lies a deep, unspoken wisdom. She understands how to create warmth from cold, how to make food from almost nothing, how to bring peace to a home even when the world outside grows difficult. Her strength is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet and constant, like the steady burning of the stove at the center of her home. So as we begin this journey tonight, breathe softly and let the rhythm of her world settle gently into your thoughts. For in old Russia, a woman's life was shaped by patience, silence, and a deep connection to the land. And through her quiet mourning, we begin to understand the heart of this ancient world. As the light of morning slowly spreads across her wooden floor, our story continues deeper into her life, her duties, her hopes, and the silent strength she carried with her each day. As the morning settles gently over the village, our story shifts from the quiet routine of a grown woman to the early world of the girls who will one day take her place. In old Russia, girlhood was not marked by bright celebrations or sudden freedoms. It grew slowly, like a small seed pushing its way through frozen ground, learning to survive in silence and find warmth in simple things. Imagine a young girl in the same wooden village, living in a house much like the one we saw before. She wakes up to the same crackling of the stove, the same sigh of wind slipping through the gaps in the logs. But her world has a softness, a curiosity, a touch of wonder still untouched by the weight of responsibilities. She rises from her small bed made of straw and wool, her hair tangled from sleep, her bare feet touching the cold wooden floor. Instead of rushing, she pauses and looks out the tiny window near her bed. Outside, the early sun is just beginning to push its golden glow across the snowy world. The light reflects off the frost-covered trees, creating a soft shimmer that feels almost magical. She watches it quietly, as if it's a story unfolding just for her. In old Russia, a girl's imagination was often her closest friend. There were no toys made of metal or glass, no books filled with pictures, no glowing screens. Her world was shaped by nature, the way the smoke from a chimney curled into the sky, the patterns frost made on the glass, the distant howl of a wolf carried on the wind. Her day begins with helping her mother, just as her mother once helped her grandmother. She learns not through instruction, but through imitation, watching hands, following movements, absorbing the rhythm of life, like a song sung softly in the background. She learns how to knead dough with patience, how to sweep the wooden floor, how to fetch water from the well, even when the snow makes the path slippery. These tasks are not burdens to her. They are threads slowly weaving her into the fabric of her family and her village. But there are moments of gentleness in her day that belong only to her. When her chores are done, she slips outside with a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. The cold air kisses her cheeks, turning them soft pink. She walks toward the edge of the forest, where the tall birch trees stand like old protectors. Here she feels free. She touches the rough bark of the trees, listens to the quiet rustle of branches, and traces shapes in the snow with the tip of her boot. In these small moments, she feels the world speaking to her in its own silent language, and she learns to understand it without any words. Her laughter is rare but precious. It comes softly like the bell chime of a church far away. Sometimes she laughs when the family's old cat chases shadows on the wall. Sometimes when her younger brother tries to wear their father's giant boots and nearly falls over. These small joys glow in her heart like tiny sparks keeping the cold away. In the evening, she sits close to the stove, listening to her mother tell stories passed down through generations. Tales of winter spirits, brave maidens, forgotten villages, and the old magic hidden in forests and rivers. She listens with wide eyes, absorbing every detail, letting these stories become a part of her. For her, stories are not entertainment. They are guidance, comfort, and connection to women who lived long before her. As she grows, the world begins to shift around her, though quietly. Her mother starts teaching her more delicate tasks. How to weave linen, how to embroider flowers onto cloth, how to manage the fire so it burns slow and steady through the night. She learns these things not just with her hands, but with her heart. Because in old Russia, a girl's strength wasn't measured by how loud she was, but by how well she could carry the warmth of home within her. She grows taller, her steps becoming more purposeful. She begins to understand the silent expectations that surround her, not through words, but through the way her mother pauses, the way the older women of the village look at her with soft approval, the way her father begins to trust her with tasks once given only to adults. Girlhood slowly, gently, transforms into something deeper. And through it all, she carries both innocence and strength woven together like the threads of a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. This is the quiet path of girlhood in old Russia. Steady, gentle, full of silent lessons and soft awakenings. A path walked with small steps, each one guiding her toward the life she will one day lead. As seasons pass quietly, the young girl begins to step into the early shades of womanhood, though nothing changes all at once. In old Russia, this transformation was not dramatic or celebrated loudly. It unfolded slowly, like the lengthening of winter shadows, barely noticeable at first, until one day the change feels gentle but unmistakable. Her footsteps sound different now on the wooden floor. Her voice grows softer and steadier, carrying a calmness she did not have before. The world around her reacts subtly, as if sensing the shift before she fully does. She wakes earlier these days, often before the low glow of dawn has touched the sky. The house is still half asleep, the stove only beginning to release its first small breaths of warmth. But she moves with purpose, no longer needing reminders or guidance. Her hands know what to do even when her mind is still waking. She stokes the fire with practiced ease, adds small logs, and watches the flame rise, gentle and steady. She feels a quiet pride in this simple task, the same task she once only observed her mother doing. Now it is part of her morning rhythm, a quiet contribution that shapes the beginning of the family's day. Her appearance changes softly, in ways she notices only when she looks into the small piece of polished metal hanging near the window. Her hair is thicker, falling over her shoulders in long waves that catch the morning light. Her posture is more confident, and her eyes carry a calm curiosity, the kind that comes from knowing more of the world, yet still wanting to discover its quieter corners. She does not rush to grow older, but she feels herself settling into this new stage like stepping into a slightly larger coat that will soon fit perfectly. Her responsibilities deepen not suddenly, but like the slow dance of snowfall covering the ground. She learns how to spin flax into thread, her fingers moving in steady circles, creating something delicate from something rough. The sound of the spinning wheel becomes part of her afternoons, a soft, repetitive whir that feels almost like a lullaby. She begins embroidering lace and flowers into cloth, each stitch carefully placed, each pattern holding meaning. Sometimes hearts, sometimes tiny stars, sometimes the swirling shapes her grandmother once taught her. These crafts are more than skills. They are a quiet inheritance passed through the hands of women before her. Outside the home, her place in the village gently shifts too. When she walks to fetch water, the older women greet her with nods that hold respect now, noticing her growing maturity. Younger children watch her with admiration, trying to copy the way she ties her scarf or the way she carries the water bucket so effortlessly. And the boys, though they say nothing, glance at her a little longer than before, their faces turning red in the cold air. She pretends not to notice, focusing instead on the snowy path beneath her feet. She is still learning who she is becoming. Evenings become her favorite time, when the sky turns pale blue and the village settles into quietness. The fire burns low, filling the house with a deep, comforting warmth. She sits close to her mother, not as a child who needs teaching, but as a young woman learning the deeper rhythms of life. Her mother speaks softly about things she once kept unspoken: how to maintain harmony in a household, how to stay calm through difficult seasons, how to find strength in patience, how to carry kindness even when the world feels heavy. These lessons are not lectures. They are shared in small, thoughtful sentences woven into the stillness of the evening. She also begins to understand the unspoken rules of the community: when to speak, when to listen, when to offer help, and when to hold silence like a shield. In old Russia, a woman's wisdom was measured not by how much she said, but by how deeply she understood the world around her. She watches, listens, observes the way the village breathes through winter, famine, celebrations, and rain. She learns to read people's moods by the tilt of a shoulder, the tone of a sigh, the way someone stirs their tea in the morning. There are quiet moments of self-discovery too. Sometimes she slips outside at dusk, breathing in the crisp air as snowflakes gently melt on her eyelashes. She stands beneath the tall birch tree near her home, the same tree she visited as a child. But now she looks at it differently, not as something magical, but as a witness to her growing. The wind touches her face, brushing away the child she once was, whispering softly of the woman she is becoming. And yet she still carries her girlhood within her, in her gentle laughter, in the way she hums old folk songs while working, in the way she smiles when the first spring flowers push through the snow. Womanhood does not erase her innocence. It simply wraps it in quiet strength. This stage of her life is a soft unfolding, not rushed, not forced. Each day adds a small piece to her identity, a thread in the tapestry of who she will be. In old Russia, young womanhood was not defined by grand events, but by the slow shaping of character, responsibility, and inner calm. As the night deepens and the wind quiets, her path continues, steady, gentle, and full of silent discoveries that guide her toward the life waiting ahead. Life for a woman in old Russia unfolded in a gentle rhythm that repeated itself with the certainty of the rising sun. It was not a life of noise or excitement, but rather one shaped by slow routines, steady responsibilities, and a quiet harmony with nature. Each day began before the rest of the village stirred. When the sky was still resting under its final layer of darkness, she would step out of bed carefully, not to disturb others, and immediately move toward the heart of the home, the stove. This stove was not just for warmth or food. It was the center of life itself, a faithful companion through long winters and chilly nights. As she opened its small door, a soft glow would greet her, and she would feed the fire with dry pieces of wood, watching the flames breathe again. The warmth spreading through the house always felt like a silent blessing. Her morning continued with simple tasks, all done with an unhurried grace. She would knead dough for bread, pressing her palms into the soft mixture again and again until it felt perfect beneath her fingers. This was a movement she had learned from her mother, who had learned it from her own mother before her. Each push of the dough carried generations of memory, tradition, and skill. The scent of rising bread filled the home, comforting and familiar. As it baked, she prepared porridge, scrubbed wooden bowls, and checked on the herbs drying in small bundles near the window. Everything had its place and every action had meaning. Once the sun had climbed into the sky, she stepped outside to begin the tasks that waited beyond the walls of her home. The air was often sharp, carrying traces of dew or frost depending on the season. She walked to the well with a wooden bucket, the path beneath her feet becoming more familiar with each passing year. The morning sounds of the village, roosters calling, doors opening, the distant creak of wagon wheels followed her quietly. At the well, she joined other women, exchanging soft greetings, sharing updates about family, crops, and small happenings. These interactions were gentle and respectful, forming the social fabric of their daily lives. Women relied on each other, not through loud friendship, but through a steady, dependable companionship. Laundry days took more time and effort. She would carry linens to the riverbank, kneeling near the water as she scrubbed them clean against smooth stones. The river's slow, steady flow offered its own kind of comfort, a soft background music that made even hard work feel peaceful. In summer, sunlight sparkled on the surface, turning the task into something bright and warm. In winter, the same task became more challenging, with icy air stinging her skin, her breath rising in soft white clouds. Yet she continued without complaint because this was her duty, and the completion of it brought a quiet satisfaction that words could not fully express. Inside the home, she spent long stretches of the day sewing, spinning flax, or repairing clothing. The spinning wheel's rhythmic turning filled the room with a soothing hum, a sound that felt almost like meditation. Her fingers moved patiently, twisting fibers into fine thread, creating something delicate out of something ordinary. Embroidery was also a cherished craft. With small, precise stitches, she created flowers, birds, and traditional patterns on sleeves, scarves, and tablecloths. These designs were not only beautiful but symbolic, carrying meanings of luck, protection, and family pride. A woman's skill with a needle was admired deeply within the community, spoken of with the same respect given to a man's skill in farming or woodworking. Meals were another central part of her day. Preparing them required thought and time, especially in seasons when food was scarce. She made soups from simple ingredients: cabbage, onions, grains, sometimes adding herbs she had dried in summer. She cooked stews slowly, letting the aroma fill the home and draw everyone toward the table. In old Russia, meals were more than nourishment. They were moments of togetherness after hours of quiet labor. As she placed bowls on the table, she felt a sense of purpose, knowing her work brought comfort to the people she loved. Evenings were her favorite time, when the sky softened and the world became still. She would sit near the stove, mending clothes or braiding her hair as the shadows danced across the wooden walls. The calm crackling of the fire felt like a soft lullaby. Sometimes she shared stories with younger children in the house, tales of spirits in the forest, heroes from old legends, and simple moral lessons passed down through generations. These stories were told not loudly but gently, in a slow voice meant to soothe and comfort. Before sleep, she tidied the home again, placing each object where it belonged. The quiet at night felt different than in the morning, heavier, deeper, peaceful in a way that wrapped around the house like a blanket. She lay down knowing she had done her best, that her work had held the day together like invisible threads, and she closed her eyes with the soft awareness that tomorrow would begin the same way. Slow, calm, and full of purpose. Her daily routine in old Russia may seem simple, but within that simplicity lived a quiet strength. Each task she performed, every step she took, shaped the life of the household, the rhythm of the village, and the stability of her world. Her days were not easy, but they were steady, meaningful, and filled with a deep, gentle resilience that only women of her time truly understood. Life for women in old Russia was deeply shaped by marriage, not the romantic kind we imagine today, but a quiet, structured transition from one world into another. A girl grew up knowing that one day she would leave her childhood home, stepping into the doorway of a new house, a new family, and a new set of responsibilities. This change did not come suddenly. It was prepared slowly, silently, through years of small lessons taught by mothers, grandmothers, and older sisters. They didn't lecture or explain in long words. Instead, they simply allowed the girl to watch them. By observing how her mother kneaded bread, how her grandmother folded linens, how her sisters spoke respectfully, she learned what was expected of her future self. When a girl reached the age of marriage, usually in her mid-teens, her parents began quietly discussing possible husbands. These conversations often happened in private corners of the house, spoken softly so the girl wouldn't worry or dream too much. Marriage was not decided by love or emotion. It was guided by practicality. Families wanted stability, good land, compatible households, and a future where their daughter would be safe, respected, and capable of raising strong children. Still, even in this simplicity, girls often felt a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. They wondered about their future husbands, their new homes, and the rhythm of life that awaited them beyond their familiar doorway. Before the wedding, one of the most intimate moments for a young woman was the preparation of her dowry chest. This chest was filled slowly over many years with embroidered shirts, hand-woven cloth, blankets, scarves, and small decorative items she had been crafting since childhood. Each stitch represented time, care, and hope. When she opened the chest, she wasn't just looking at fabric. She was looking at pieces of her own identity, created with her own hands, ready to accompany her into a new life. The wedding day itself carried a deep, almost sacred stillness. It was lively in its rituals, but gentle in its emotions. Women would help the bride dress in her finest clothing, usually a long embroidered dress paired with a headdress that symbolized her stepping into adulthood. Her hair, traditionally a symbol of innocence, was braided with ribbons or flowers. As she prepared, she rarely spoke. She simply listened to the soft voices around her, the rustle of cloth, and the quiet breathing of the women who guided her through the moment. Even if she felt nervous, the presence of those older than her wrapped around her like a calm blanket. Marriage in old Russia brought not only companionship, but also expectations, many of which were silently carried by women. A young wife was expected to run the household, provide food, care for younger siblings or children, and maintain order and harmony. Her new home often included not just her husband, but also his parents, grandparents, and extended family. This meant learning new habits, adjusting to new rules, and finding her place within an already established system. There were moments when she felt shy or overwhelmed, but she never complained openly. Instead, she let time guide her, trusting that daily repetition would slowly turn unfamiliar tasks into natural rhythms. Love in Old Russia did not begin loudly. It did not arrive through dramatic declarations or poetic gestures. It began quietly, through shared meals, through small glances during work, through evenings spent near the fire when the rest of the household slept. Over time, a husband and wife might come to understand each other deeply, the way two trees grow side by side, their roots slowly intertwining beneath the earth without making any sound. This kind of closeness grew from patience, respect, and endurance rather than emotional excitement. Women carried the emotional softness of the home. When someone was sad, they offered comfort. When a child cried, they soothed them. When their husbands returned from long days of labor, they provided warmth, food, and gentle conversation. Their love was expressed not through words but through actions. A repaired shirt, a freshly baked loaf of bread, a warm place prepared near the stove on a winter evening. At the same time, there were silent burdens too. Women often felt the weight of expectations pressing on their shoulders. The pressure to bear children, to be patient, to avoid conflict, to maintain peace in the household. When difficulties came, illness, poverty, or loss, they were expected to stay steady, to hold the family together with the same quiet strength they used to hold their children. And though many of these struggles remained unspoken, women relied on each other for relief. Conversations at the well or while spinning wool turned into moments of emotional sharing. Through whispered words and knowing glances, they created a gentle network of support stronger than any formal rule. As years passed, a woman grew into her role with growing confidence. She understood her household deeply, the way it breathed, the way it moved, the way it came to life in the early morning light. She learned the moods of each family member, the timings of the seasons, and the subtle language of survival. Marriage, once a frightening mystery, became another rhythm in the long song of her life. And when she became older, she passed her knowledge to the next generation, guiding young girls the same way she had once been guided, through actions, not speeches, through quiet example, not forced instruction. She showed them how to live with patience, how to work with care, and how to love with a silent kind of resilience. In this way, the cycle continued across centuries, with each woman adding her own gentle strength to the story of Old Russia. Clothing for women in Old Russia was much more than fabric stitched together. It was a language, a calm, silent way of expressing who they were, where they came from, and what stage of life they were in. Every thread held meaning. Every color carried a memory. Every pattern whispered something about their family, their region, or even their hopes. Women wore garments that were simple, practical, and warm, yet beautifully detailed in a soft, understated way that matched the rhythm of old Russian life. There were no bright lights, no mirrors, no loud fashion choices, only the slow, gentle touch of tradition shaping what they wore. Most women began their day by slipping into a long linen dress or shirt that reached their ankles. This garment felt light, natural, and soft against the skin because it was made from hand-spun material, woven carefully during cold winter months. Over this, they often layered a sleeveless overdress or apron, something sturdy enough to withstand work in the fields, in the kitchen, or around the home. Clothing was designed to be comfortable for movement, yet still modest and respectful. Every fold, every piece of embroidery, every small tassel had been created by hands that cared deeply, often belonging to the women themselves or those close to them. The embroidery on their dresses was not only decoration, it was protection. In old Russia, people believed that certain symbols kept away misfortune and brought good luck to the home. So women stitched tiny patterns along the edges of sleeves, around collars, and near hems. These patterns were often red, a color believed to protect the body and spirit. When a young girl embroidered her first dress, she wasn't just learning a skill. She was connecting herself to generations of women before her, each one adding her own quiet artistry to the fabric of time. Head coverings were a gentle but important part of a woman's appearance. Young girls wore their hair loose or braided, the braid itself becoming a symbol of youth and innocence. But after marriage, a woman was expected to cover her hair, showing her new dignity and responsibility. She might wrap her head in a soft scarf, tie it neatly behind her neck, or wear a more elaborate headdress for special occasions. These coverings were not restrictive. They were warm, comforting, and woven with patterns that told stories only other women fully understood. A married woman's headdress carried the quiet pride of adulthood, a calm acknowledgement of her role in the household. Beauty in old Russia was simple, natural, and deeply connected to daily life. Women did not have makeup in the way we understand it today. There were no shimmering powders, bold colors, or perfumes made in fine bottles. Instead, their beauty came from the softness of their skin, warmed by hearth fire, from the natural glow of working in sunlight, from the brightness of their eyes as they laughed with other women, and from the quiet confidence that slowly grew with age. Sometimes they used berry juice to add slight color to their cheeks or lips, but even this was subtle, just a small touch of warmth against the cold. Hair care was a calm ritual of its own. Women brushed their hair with wooden combs slowly and gently, allowing the sound of the comb moving through the strands to fill the room like a soft evening melody. On special days, they braided their hair with ribbons, weaving in colors that matched the season or the celebration. Weddings brought the most intricate braids, carefully arranged by female relatives as they whispered blessings for happiness, fertility, and long life. These moments created strong emotional connections, linking youth and womanhood through shared touch and gentle companionship. Jewelry, too, had meaning. Women wore simple wooden beads or metal pendants that symbolized peace, protection, and harmony. A mother might give her daughter a small charm before marriage, something to keep her safe as she entered a new household. Wealthier families had more elaborate pieces, but even their jewelry stayed soft in appearance, never flashy. Everything in old Russia, from clothing to ornaments, carried the same quiet, calming aesthetic that defined the culture. Respectful, practical, meaningful, and slightly understated. On festival days, however, the calm ways of daily life softened into something more colorful. Women wore brighter dresses, richer patterns, and layered skirts that gently swayed as they walked or danced. Their ribbons were longer, their jewelry more polished, and their smiles a little wider. Even then, though, the overall atmosphere remained peaceful. The celebrations never felt overwhelming or loud. Instead, they felt like moments when the community breathed together, warmed together, and allowed itself to feel joy without showiness. In the depth of winter, clothing became a shield against the cold. Women wrapped themselves in wool shawls, thick skirts, and fur-lined garments that kept them warm through long journeys across snow-covered fields. These winter clothes were heavy but comforting, like being held by the land itself. Walking outside while wrapped in these layers created a gentle silence, the kind where footsteps sink softly into snow and the world seems to move slower, almost as if it is drifting towards sleep. And through all these layers, patterns, and textures, one truth remained constant. Women dressed not to impress but to endure, to protect, and to carry their identity with quiet strength. Their appearance was shaped by their environment, their responsibility, and the traditions passed lovingly from mother to daughter. Clothing was simply another way they connected their inner world to the outer world, calmly, patiently, and beautifully. As the quiet evening settles around us, let us gently move into another part of a woman's life in old Russia. A world where traditions wrapped every moment like a soft shawl around the shoulders. Imagine you are still sitting in that wooden home, the light fading beyond the small glass window, the shadows growing long, and the air becoming cool and still. This is where another layer of her life begins to reveal itself. The world of expectations, duties, and the unspoken rules that shaped every day. In old Russia, a woman's responsibilities were woven into the rhythm of life like threads in a simple linen cloth. From the moment she rose before dawn, to the time she finally rested her head at night, her tasks followed her like steady footsteps. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the soft rustle of her clothing as she moved quietly through the house, beginning the day even before the first rays of light touched the snowy ground. She would light the fire, warm the water, and prepare the morning meal, all while the village around her slept in peaceful silence. It was work, yes, but it was also a familiar rhythm, a gentle routine she could perform even with her eyes half closed. As the sun slowly lifted into the sky, she stepped into the world outside her home. There were chores waiting for her, gathering water from the well, feeding the animals, washing fabric by the river. Each task carried its own slow, calming pace. The flowing water, the sound of wind through the trees, the distant call of birds, all of it wove into her day like nature's own soft narration. Even in the busiest moments, there was a strange kind of peace in the repetition. The world of old Russia was not rushed. Life moved with the seasons, with sunlight, with the quiet turning of time, and yet behind the calm rhythm, there were expectations. A woman was expected to be gentle, patient, hardworking, and loyal. In many homes, she held the heart of the household, even if no one said it aloud. When someone needed comfort, it was her lap where they rested their head. When something went wrong, it was her steady hands that fixed it. She might not have held power in the way men did, but she shaped the warmth of the home, the peace of the evening, and the order of each day. Without her, the house felt empty, unfinished, almost silent. As we walk slowly through her world, imagine sitting beside her as she spins wool on a quiet afternoon. The wooden spindle turns softly in her fingers, making a whispering sound like a gentle lullaby. This was one of the most traditional tasks of Russian women: spinning, weaving, stitching the fabric that would clothe the entire family. Each thread passing through her hands carried the warmth of her work, the patience of her heart, and the quiet stories of the day. And even though it was labor, it was also peaceful, almost meditative. Many women said their thoughts drifted as they worked, thinking about their dreams, their future children, or the stories their mothers once told them. When winter wrapped the world in deep snow, her responsibilities grew heavier but calmer. The days were short, and most of the work happened inside the warm, dim house. The crackling of the fire, the slow stirring of soup in a pot, the deep silence outside. All of this created a kind of dreamy quiet that settled into everything. Women spent these long evenings repairing clothes, preparing food stores, and sharing stories with the family. And in these moments, surrounded by warmth, the home truly felt like her kingdom, a small but sacred space shaped by her touch. But even with all this work, a woman in old Russia found small moments of rest. After the chores were done, she might step outside into the cool evening air, breathe in deeply, and feel the soft calm of the sky above her. Sometimes she would sit by the window looking out at the snow or the fields, letting her thoughts drift slowly and gently like a river at twilight. And in these rare, quiet moments, she understood herself, not just as a wife or daughter or worker, but as a woman with her own quiet strength and quiet dreams. As the night deepens around our story, imagine the village falling into silence once again. The houses dim their lights, the wind softens, and the world grows still. Women across old Russia settle into their beds, tired but peaceful, ready to let the darkness carry them into sleep. Their lives were not easy, but they were steady, calm, shaped by love, work, and a deep connection to the land around them. As the soft night air settles around us once again, let us gently step forward into the next part of a woman's life in old Russia, a world shaped not only by daily work and quiet responsibilities, but also by traditions of beauty, clothing, and the subtle ways women express themselves through the ages. Imagine the soft glow of a candle lighting up a small wooden room, its flame moving gently as if breathing. In that warm, flickering light, a woman prepares herself for the day, slowly, calmly, with the simple grace that defined old Russian life. Clothing in old Russia was more than just something to wear. It was a quiet language of color, embroidery, and tradition. A woman's dress could tell you where she came from, whether she was married or unmarried, and sometimes even what season it was. Imagine her pulling out a long, flowing garment made of linen in summer or thick wool in winter. The fabric feels natural, slightly rough at first touch, but warm and comforting. She smooths it with her hands, not in a hurry but with a slow, practiced motion as though she has done this every day since childhood. Women often wore a long shirt called a rubaka, soft and simple, falling like a straight line from shoulder to ankle. Over it they added layers, an apron, a decorated vest, maybe a warm shawl woven by a mother or grandmother. The embroidery was never random. Every small red thread, every curve of the needle, carried meaning. Some designs protected the wearer from harm. Others symbolized fertility, happiness, or long life. Imagine her tracing the embroidery lightly with her fingertips, remembering the hands that made it, perhaps her own, perhaps someone who loved her deeply. Hair, too, held its own beauty and tradition. Young, unmarried women kept their hair long, often braided into a single thick plait that hung down their back. On special days, they decorated it with ribbons or small flowers. Married women, however, covered their hair completely. It was a quiet symbol of dignity, commitment, and adulthood. Imagine a woman tying her hair beneath a soft cloth, smoothing it gently, making sure every strand is tucked away. This was not done quickly. It was slow, careful, and almost ceremonial, a daily reminder of her place in the world. Jewelry, though simple, carried meaning as well. A small cross worn on a cord around the neck, a pair of earrings passed down from mother to daughter, a thin bracelet made from copper or wood. Each piece held memory and connection. As she placed them on, she felt a sense of continuity, like she was stepping into the footsteps of countless women before her. And then there was the world of scent. Not perfume, but the natural smells of old Russian life. The soft fragrance of linen dried under the sun. The faint sweetness of beeswax from candles. The earthy smell of wood, grain, and herbs that filled every home. All of these wove together into a comforting background, wrapping around her like a gentle blanket. As we walk slowly through this part of her world, imagine how a woman felt carrying these traditions with her. She did not have many opportunities to choose her own style, but she found quiet ways to express herself. A brighter ribbon on some days, a carefully chosen shawl on others, a bit more embroidery around the sleeves if she had time. Little moments of identity, small sparks of beauty that helped her feel seen, even in a world where her voice wasn't always heard. On festival days, everything grew brighter. Women wore their finest clothes, vivid reds, deep blues, shining gold threads, colors that stood out beautifully against the snowy Russian landscape. They braided their hair with care, painted their cheeks with soft berry juice, and walked through the village with gentle pride. These were rare days when the quiet, hard-working woman became a figure of beauty, tradition, and community. For a moment, she felt like she belonged to something bigger, something sacred. As the day slowed into evening once again, she carefully folded her garments, placed her jewelry in a small wooden box, and let her long braid fall loose. The candlelight dimmed, the room cooled, and the world softened around her. She wrapped herself in a simple night shawl, the kind worn by women for generations, and lay down to rest. Her clothing told stories, her hair held memories, and her traditions grounded her in the deep, ancient rhythm of old Russian life. As the night deepens and settles around us like a soft blanket, let us move quietly into another gentle part of a woman's life in old Russia. Her relationships, her friendships, and the tender ways women supported one another in a world that was often heavy and demanding. Imagine a small wooden village where the houses stand close together, smoke rising slowly from chimneys, and inside those homes, women share moments of calm connection that carried them through each difficult day. Friendship among women in old Russia was not loud or dramatic. It was something softer, quieter, something woven through shared work and long, slow conversations while hands stayed busy. Imagine two women sitting together outside on a warm afternoon, peeling vegetables, spinning wool, or sewing embroidery. Their work is rhythmic, their breathing steady, and their voices gentle. They do not rush. Life in old Russia rarely allowed rushing. Women depended on one another deeply. When a young woman married and moved into her husband's household, she often felt shy or lonely at first. But the older women, her mother-in-law, her sisters-in-law, her neighbors, slowly welcomed her into their circle. Not with grand speeches, but with small gestures. A shared loaf of bread. Advice whispered while kneading dough. A warm scarf gifted on a cold morning. These tiny acts were the threads that connected women to one another. Imagine a winter evening when the ground outside is covered in deep snow. Inside a warm wooden house, several women gather together. They sit near the stove, the only bright and glowing place in the room. Their hands are busy, sewing, mending, spinning, but their eyes soften when they look at each other. They talk about their children, their worries, their hopes. Their voices rise and fall like a lullaby. Outside, the wind howls softly, but inside, their companionship creates a feeling of safety, like a quiet little world within a world. And among these friendships, there were older women, grandmothers, mothers, widows, whose wisdom was treasured. Imagine sitting next to such a woman. Her hands are wrinkled but gentle. Her voice is slow and steady. She tells stories from long ago, tales about spirits in the forest, lessons learned from hard winters, memories of people who are gone now but still loved in silence. For younger women, these stories were guidance, comfort, and sometimes the only education they received about life, marriage, and survival. There were also moments of shared joy. Festivals where women sang together in soft, echoing harmonies. Dances where they moved slowly in circles under open skies. Evenings where they joked, laughed, and forgot for a moment how heavy life could be. Imagine the sound of their laughter floating through the cold air, gentle and warm, like a small flame glowing in the dark. But above all, women supported each other through hardship. When someone lost a loved one, neighbors came quietly with bread, warm soup, or simply their presence. They sat with her, letting silence speak when words could not. When a woman went into labor, other women gathered around her, comforting her, holding her hand, helping her bring new life into the world. In those moments, the bonds between them felt sacred, something ancient, something that had kept communities alive for centuries. Even the simplest things carried meaning. Teaching a girl to braid her hair, showing her how to cook her first meal, helping her make her first embroidered cloth. Through these actions, women passed down not just skills, but love, strength, and identity. Imagine a mother guiding her daughter's hands while she learns to sew, her voice soft and patient, her smile gentle. These moments were the heartbeat of old Russian womanhood. As the day faded into night, these friendships remained like small lanterns glowing in the darkness. Women might not have had power in the world outside, but together, in their shared spaces, they created warmth, comfort, and understanding. Their strength was quiet, but it was deep, like the roots of ancient trees holding the earth in place. Let us now drift gently into another part of life for women in old Russia, a part that shaped their days quietly, but powerfully: their work. Not the loud, busy kind of work we often imagine today, but slow, steady, rhythmic tasks that filled the hours from sunrise to sunset. Imagine the soft glow of early morning light falling over a wooden village as the world begins to wake and a woman steps into her daily responsibilities with calm determination. In old Russia, a woman's work was constant. It did not begin with a clock, nor did it end with one. Instead, it flowed with the seasons, the weather, and the needs of the household. Picture her starting her morning by lighting the stove, the fire crackling softly, warmth spreading slowly through the room. She moves with quiet efficiency, not rushing, but never stopping. Her hands seem to know what to do even before she thinks. Imagine her walking outside into the crisp morning air, carrying a wooden pail to the well. The village is mostly still, with only a few soft sounds. The distant lowing of animals, the crunch of frost under her feet, the gentle creaking of the bucket as she lowers it into the dark, cold water. She lifts it carefully, balancing the weight against her hip, and walks back home, each step firm and practiced. Inside, the tasks continue: kneading dough, feeding the animals, washing clothes in cold water that stings her fingers. These jobs were not glamorous, but they were essential. They kept the entire household alive, and she did them with a calm, steady spirit born from years of habit and acceptance. As the morning becomes afternoon, her work shifts. Imagine her sitting near a window, the sunlight falling softly across her lap as she spins wool or flax. The wheel turns slowly, steadily, the soft whirring sound calming, almost hypnotic. Her hands move with a quiet grace, pulling the fibers, twisting them, creating thread that would later be woven into clothing, blankets, or linens. Spinning was more than work. It was a peaceful escape. A moment where she could sit, breathe, and let her thoughts drift. Sometimes, women spun together, forming small clusters of silent companionship. Their wheels turned in gentle harmony, like several small hearts beating in the same rhythm. In warmer months, her tasks moved outdoors. She tended the kitchen garden, growing onions, garlic, cabbage, carrots, and herbs. Imagine her kneeling near the soil, her hands digging gently, the earth cool and soft beneath her fingers. She watered the plants using a wooden ladle, humming quietly to herself. In old Russia, a woman's garden was her pride, a place of calm creation, where she nurtured life in the simplest form. And yet, her work did not stop when the sun reached the horizon. Evening brought a different set of responsibilities. Mending torn clothes by candlelight, preparing food for the next day, checking on the animals one last time. The house, small and wooden, glowed softly with the amber light of the oil lamp, and she moved through it with a slow, practiced rhythm. Imagine her sitting by the stove after the day's work is done. The room is warm, the fire crackles gently, and she finally rests. Her hands are tired, her back aches slightly, but there is a quiet peace in this moment. She watches the flames flicker, letting her breath even out. In this stillness, she feels a small sense of accomplishment, the kind that comes not from praise or recognition, but from knowing she has kept her family safe, warm, and fed. This was the work of women in old Russia, steady, demanding, endless, but filled with a deep, grounding calm. It was not easy, but it was meaningful. Through their hands, homes stayed warm, children grew strong, and communities survived harsh winters and long years. And as we sit here together, listening softly to these memories, Let the quiet rhythm of her day settle over you like a blanket. Breathe slowly. Let us now drift softly into another part of a woman's life in old Russia. Her role in the community. This part of her world was quieter than the busy home, yet it carried a deep sense of connection. A gentle network of hands, voices, and traditions that held the village together like invisible threads. Imagine a small Russian village at dusk. Wooden houses sit quietly under the soft colors of the fading sky. Smoke rises slowly from chimneys. The day's heavy work is done, and now comes a time when women step into the social heart of the village, not with noise or excitement, but with a calm, familiar warmth. A woman in old Russia belonged not only to her household but also to a wider circle. The community was her extended family, a living structure built on cooperation and shared responsibility. She relied on other women, and they relied on her, and together they created a gentle but powerful support system. Think of her walking to a neighbor's house in the evening, carrying a small basket with bread or berries. The path is lit only by the pale silver moonlight. The air is quiet, but comforting. When she enters the home, she is greeted with soft smiles, a warm stove, and the familiar sound of women's voices blending together. They sit in a circle, spinning wool, sewing clothing, or preparing herbs for winter. Their hands work steadily, and their voices drift in peaceful conversation. These gatherings, known as posidelki, were the emotional heart of village life. Women shared stories, worries, blessings, and laughter. They talked about the weather, the harvest, their children, their husbands, and their dreams. No one hurried. No one rushed. The hours slipped by gently, like a calm stream moving under a bridge. Sometimes the gatherings took place outdoors in summer. Imagine them sitting beneath the soft shade of birch trees. The breeze moves through the leaves like a quiet whisper. Birds call in the distance. Women weave garlands of flowers, braid each other's hair, or sing old folk songs. Slow, melodic, and soothing. Their voices rise and fall together, creating a sense of harmony that feels almost like a lullaby to the land itself. Women in old Russia also played a major role in village rituals. Whether it was preparing for a wedding, a baptism, a seasonal festival, or the blessing of a home, they carried traditions forward. Picture them standing together beside a small wooden church, wearing simple but beautiful embroidered sarafans. They move with gentle purpose, lighting candles, singing hymns, offering bread and salt, all quiet acts that shaped the spiritual life of the village. And when someone in the community faced hardship, a woman never faced it alone. If illness struck a household, neighbors brought food and helped with chores. If a new baby was born, women gathered to guide the young mother, holding the newborn with careful, loving hands. If a family lost someone, the women supported each other through long nights of prayer and remembrance. These bonds created a kind of emotional warmth that balanced the cold Russian winters. Even though life was hard, no woman stood isolated. The community was her shelter, a place where she was seen, understood, and valued. Her identity was woven into the lives of others, and their lives were woven into hers. Imagine her walking home from a gathering late at night. The path is dark, but she is not afraid. She knows every step. The silence feels peaceful. A thin mist hugs the fields, and the distant glow of her house welcomes her. She enters quietly, the floorboards creaking softly under her feet, and she sits for a moment by the stove, letting the warmth sink into her bones before preparing for sleep. In this slow, gentle way, the community shaped a woman's life in old Russia. It gave her companionship, meaning, and a sense of belonging that softened the difficulties of everyday life. Let us now step softly into another part of a woman's world in old Russia, the world of clothing, beauty, and personal care. This part of her life may seem simple at first, but in truth, it carried deep meaning. Every thread, every color, every gesture reflected warmth, tradition, and the quiet grace of her everyday existence. Imagine a cool morning inside a wooden Russian home. The sun has not fully risen yet. Only a pale light enters through the small window. A woman wakes slowly, her body still wrapped in the warmth of a thick woven blanket. She sits up, stretches gently, and begins her calm morning routine. Not rushed, not hurried, just steady and peaceful. Her clothing was more than fabric. It was a language, a story told without words. The first layer she wore was a simple linen shift, soft from years of washing and sunlight. The linen had a natural calming smell, something earthy, something clean. Over it she added her sarafan, a long flowing dress made of cotton or wool depending on the season. The colors were usually deep and natural, warm reds, soft blues, muted greens, or earthy browns. Each stitch was handmade, each pattern carried memories. Some dresses were given to her by her mother. Some she made herself during long winter nights beside the crackling stove. Running her fingers over the embroidery became a gentle reminder of family, roots, and womanhood. Hair was another part of beauty that held meaning. Imagine her brushing her long hair in slow, steady strokes. The room is silent except for the soft sound of the brush moving through the strands. In old Russia, a woman's hair symbolized purity, strength, and dignity. Young girls wore braids. Married women covered their hair with scarves or headdresses. These customs were not rules that weighed her down, but traditions that gave her identity and pride. A married woman often wore a kokoshnik, a beautifully crafted headdress. Imagine her placing it gently on her head, a piece decorated with pearls, small beads, or intricate stitching. It wasn't something she wore every day, only on special occasions. But even touching it brought a sense of calm joy, as if she were connecting to generations before her. Personal care in old Russia was simple yet deeply soothing. Women used herbs for almost everything. Imagine her standing by the riverbank in summer, gathering wild mint, chamomile, and lavender. The soft breeze brushes her cheeks while the water flows quietly beside her. These herbs later filled her home with gentle scents, the smell of peace, of nature, of quiet wellness. When she washed her face, she used warm water infused with chamomile. When she cared for her hair, she rinsed it with herbs that made it soft and fragrant. When she felt tired, she brewed mint or linden tea, sipping it slowly as she sat by the window, watching birds glide across the sky. Even her shoes had a story. She wore simple bast shoes, woven from tree bark. Imagine her slipping them on before stepping outside. They were light, soft, and quiet on the ground. In winter, she changed to warm felt boots, thick and comforting against the cold. Nothing in her appearance was extravagant. Everything was subtle, natural, and filled with meaning. Her beauty was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was quiet, the kind of beauty that grows softly, like a candle glowing in a still room. Imagine the moment when she looks at herself in a small metal mirror. Nothing fancy, just a simple reflection. She sees a woman who works hard, who carries her family, who honors her traditions, and who moves through life with calm strength. And even though she may never say it aloud, she carries a quiet pride within her. As she steps outside, her dress sways gently. Her scarf catches the morning light. Her footsteps fall softly on the earth. And in that simple moment, she becomes a small but beautiful part of the vast Russian landscape. A landscape filled with forests, rivers, fields, and stories. Let us now drift gently into another part of a woman's life in old Russia, her role within the village community. It was a world shaped by quiet routines, shared work, and simple kindness. And though life was not always easy, there was a soft strength in the way she moved through each day, supported by the community around her. Imagine a small Russian village at dawn. Wooden houses stand close together, their roofs covered with frost or morning dew. Smoke rises slowly from chimneys as families begin their day. The air is cool, clean, and still. In the center of the village, the well waits, a place where women gather not just for water but for connection. Picture her walking toward the well, carrying a wooden yoke across her shoulders. Her footsteps are steady, her clothes moving gently with the early breeze. Other women arrive too, some talking softly, others smiling quietly, their voices blending with the distant sound of a rooster calling from somewhere across the fields. This morning gathering was one of the rare times she could relax, even if only for a moment. At the well, she lowers her bucket, hearing the calm splash as it breaks the surface of the water. As she pulls it up, the rope sliding smoothly through her hands, she exchanges a few warm words with the women around her. They talk about the weather. They talk about the crops. They talk about their children, their homes, their hopes. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed, just the easy rhythm of daily life. Sometimes they laugh softly but sincerely, sharing stories that lighten the weight of the day ahead. These moments reminded her that she was not alone. Every woman here understood her struggles. Every woman here shared the same simple joys. In this small circle, she found comfort, support, and gentle strength. Community life in old Russia relied deeply on cooperation. Imagine the times when families gathered to help one another build homes. Men worked with wood and tools, while women prepared food, carried supplies, and offered helping hands wherever needed. Children ran around, their laughter ringing through the crisp air. On harvest days, the entire village became a single heartbeat. Women moved through the fields with quiet focus, gathering wheat or rye in soft, steady motions. The sun warmed their backs, and the rustling of grain created a soothing, endless whisper. This shared work brought people together in a way that felt meaningful and grounding. There were also evenings when neighbors gathered outside their homes during the summer, sitting on benches along the wooden fences. Imagine her sitting among them, her hands folded in her lap, listening to gentle conversations. Someone might hum an old folk tune. Someone else might tell a calm, simple story from childhood. Fireflies drifted slowly through the air, and the night wrapped everyone in a peaceful hush. The church also played a central role in her life, not as a place of pressure or fear, but as a quiet space where she could breathe, reflect, and feel connected to something larger than herself. Imagine her stepping inside on a cold morning, the warm glow of candles filling the room. Icons on the wall shimmer softly in the candlelight, and the scent of incense moves through the air like a gentle wave. She bows her head, not out of obligation, but out of calm respect. In festivals, too, she found joy. Weddings, feast days, and seasonal celebrations brought music, dancing, and shared meals. Women prepared traditional dishes, decorated homes with wildflowers, and wore their best dresses. Imagine her spinning slowly in a folk dance, the fabric of her sarafan swirling around her ankles, her braid moving lightly as she smiles at the people she has known all her life. Even in the hardest times, the village community helped her endure. When someone fell ill, neighbors brought warm food. When a child was born, women gathered to help the new mother. When tragedy struck, no one suffered alone. They shared sorrow, just as they shared joy. Quietly, gently, with open hearts. This sense of belonging shaped her life deeply. It gave her comfort. It gave her purpose. And it reminded her that even in a world filled with challenges, she was surrounded by people who cared, people who understood, people who stood beside her every day. As the night settles a little deeper, let us walk quietly into another part of a woman's world in old Russia. A world shaped by love, by worry, and by a strength that often lived in silence. This is the world of Russian mothers. Imagine you are sitting in a wooden house at dawn. The light is soft, almost silver, touching the floorboards with a pale glow. A woman slowly wakes, pulling a warm shawl around her shoulders. She moves gently, so she doesn't disturb the sleeping children beside her. In these early hours, before the village truly wakes, her day begins. For a mother in old Russia, life was a circle of caring. She cooked, she washed, she mended clothes with patient hands. She soothed small arguments, whispered stories to restless children, and wiped away tears with the corner of her sleeve. Her work rarely paused, yet she carried it all with a quiet grace, as though she understood that her steady presence was the heartbeat of the home. Let us imagine her stepping outside. The morning air is cool. The smell of earth and smoke drifts from a nearby chimney. She gathers water from the well, her breath soft in the crisp air, and she feels the weight of the wooden bucket pull against her hands. This moment is peaceful, a small pause in a long day, and she cherishes it. Inside the house, children begin to stir. Little feet patter on the wooden floor. A warm fire crackles again. She calls them softly, her voice careful and loving, guiding them into the day ahead. For Russian mothers, their children were not simply part of life. They were the reason to endure. The cold winters, the long work, the quiet sacrifices. Their love was deep, shaped by centuries of tradition, woven into every gesture, every lullaby, every whispered prayer. As the hours pass, she teaches her daughters how to knead dough, how to stitch a seam, how to walk with dignity and softness. She teaches her sons the value of kindness, of responsibility, of honor. Her voice becomes a gentle guide that shapes futures. And in the evening, when the sun fades behind the distant trees, she gathers her children close. A soft hush settles over the room. She tells them small stories, some about old spirits of the forest, some about brave ancestors, but always in a voice that slows the heart and warms the quiet night. Her strength was rarely spoken of. It was not written in books, but it lived in daily life, in steady movements, in tender touches, in the calm wisdom that only a mother carries. As we sit with her in this gentle moment, you may feel a sense of peace, a reminder that throughout history, women have been the silent protectors of home, the keepers of warmth, the ones who hold families together through storms and seasons. And as the night deepens further, let us drift softly from this warm wooden house into the next quiet chapter of a woman's journey in old Russia. In old Russia, a woman's life was woven gently into the rhythms of nature, as though every season spoke to her in a quiet language she understood by heart. Imagine her waking on a summer morning, the air warm and soft, the tall grass outside moving in slow waves like a gentle sea. She steps outside her wooden house with a calmness that comes from living close to the earth, and she feels the cool ground beneath her feet. Nature was not separate from her, it lived beside her, shaped her days, and comforted her spirit. The forest edge was a familiar friend, the fields a patient companion, the sky a silent witness to her hopes and prayers. When she gathered berries, herbs, or wildflowers, she moved with respect, taking only what was needed. She believed that the earth listened, that the breeze carried meaning, that the river had a memory. To her, nature was alive, kind, unpredictable, and sacred. During long winters when snow covered everything in a soft white stillness, she felt nature's presence in a different way. Quiet, heavy, thoughtful, like a deep pause in the world. In these months, women found comfort in the small rituals that connected them to the earth even when it slept beneath the cold. They kept herbs hanging from the ceiling, dried from summer sunlight. They burned small bunches of aromatic plants to bring warmth to the home. They spoke softly about how winter was not a punishment, but a season of rest, a time to gather strength for the next bloom of spring. For women, nature's slow cycles were mirrors of their own lives, moments of growth, moments of stillness, moments of change. On spring mornings, the connection grew even deeper. Women stepped outside to feel the first gentle winds carrying the smell of thawing soil. They welcomed the returning birds like old friends, believing that their songs carried good fortune. The first green shoots appearing through melting snow filled them with quiet joy, because they reminded women that life always returns, no matter how long the winter lasts. Many women marked these early days of spring with small personal traditions, sometimes a whispered thank you to the sky, sometimes a small offering of breadcrumbs for the birds, sometimes simply a peaceful moment standing in the sunlight with closed eyes. These acts were not written rules. They were feelings passed down from mother to daughter, forming an unspoken bond between women and the world around them. In autumn, when golden leaves fell from birch trees like soft rain, women felt a sense of peaceful preparation. They walked through forests wearing woolen shawls, gathering mushrooms, herbs, and fruits for the long months ahead. Autumn required patience, skill, and a steady mind, and Russian women approached it with a unique blend of strength and calmness. They dried herbs with care, storing them in cloth bags for the winter. They crushed berries into thick jams, filling jars with deep red and purple colors. They chopped wood, cleaned yards, and prepared food, each action guided by an understanding that nature gives generously, but only when treated with respect. Women walked through this golden season as though participating in a quiet dance with the earth, moving together, preparing together, surviving together. Even simple daily moments revealed their bond with nature. A woman kneading dough in the morning felt the warmth of the fire, smelled the scent of burning pine wood, and listened to the sound of wind against the walls. A woman spinning wool watched the slow turning of the spindle, imagining the sheep grazing outside. A woman washing clothes at the river felt the cool water swirling around her hands, and believed that the river carried away not just dirt, but old worries. These moments grounded her spirit, kept her calm, and reminded her that life flowed best when lived gently, step by step, day by day. This deep connection with nature shaped a woman's identity in old Russia. It taught her patience when the world felt heavy. It taught her resilience when times were harsh. It taught her joy through small, quiet things, sunlight through a window, the song of distant birds, the smell of fresh bread, the touch of warm earth. Nature was her teacher, her guide, and her faithful companion. And as the night grows a little stiller around us now, we can almost feel that old, peaceful bond, the same slow rhythm of wind, earth, and time that supported generations of women before us. It is a reminder that even in the simplest moments of life, there can be beauty, meaning, and deep, comforting calm.